Welcome to Burn Popcorn. I'm Dave Masakura.
I'm Tony Thomas.
And this is our Oscar special. But before we get to going over our impressions of the Oscars, some big news in the movie and television world are centered around the passing of icon Leonard Nimoy. A very, very distressing thing for Nerdland. It has affected tons of people. Many of them went immediately to Twitter and such as myself and retweeted his final tweet. A lot of celebrities that came out and expressed their condolences. But more importantly, let's talk about how it affected us personally. Tony,
right.
Trekkie you are, Trekkie I am. How did it affect you?
It was, I did not think Leonard was going to be the first to go out of the last group of guys. He's the same age as Shatner, but for some reason I always thought Shatner was going to be the first to go. And maybe that's because you associate Nimoy so much with this character who, by all means, Vulcans have very, very long lifespans, and they did bring him back from the dead in Star Trek 3. So you almost thought like he could go on forever. And when a few days before his passing, the news of him going into the hospital was distressing, since he came out about a year ago and alerted everybody about his suffering from COPD due to his, I think, 40-some years, if not more, of his life spent smoking. And
he became heavily active near the end of his life with promoting anti-smoking and all that stuff because of this thing that happened. He quit smoking, what was it, like 30 years ago or something like that, and it just caught up with him.
Right. Very sad. And funny enough, growing up, I did not know Leonard Nimoy as well from Star Trek. I knew him more from a show he hosted in the 70s called In Search Of, which A&E would play afternoons when I would come home from school.
Keep in mind, people, he may be the only person in the world who can honestly say, I knew Leonard Nimoy from, what was the show again?
In Search Of.
In Search Of, rather than Star Trek.
I knew of him from Star Trek, but as a child, I was not really into Star Trek.
What was it, your dad watched?
He watched In Search Of, my father, and he also watched Star Trek. He's a big fan of the classic series. But the classic series was something my father watched, and I was way more into Star Wars. And
so you never got into the original?
Never got into it like some people did. So I knew Leonard Nimoy very well from In Search Of, which was a paranormal investigation show he hosted on A&E. In the vein of Unsolved Mysteries, the show kind of focused on cryptozoology, unexplained disappearances, ghosts, aliens, that sort of thing. Very interesting series. I actually purchased the set, all 146 episodes, off of Amazon about a week before he passed away. It arrived the day after. So I've been watching that here and there, trying to relive some of those memories.
So I don't know if you noticed, but in the Twitterverse, after his passing, William Shatner got into a bit of a hubbub
with
some of the fans that were asking a little bit of questions about his not going to the funeral.
Yes.
William Shatner, of course, said that he was attending a benefit.
Yes, for the Red Cross, I believe.
Out in Florida. And he wasn't able to make it or rearrange plans. What do you think that there was some still lingering?
I don't think so. I think they made up towards the end, and I also feel that with something like that, it probably would have been very difficult for Shatner to get out of, especially since he already made a commitment to those people, and there were probably a lot of fans, especially of Star Trek, that were going there to see.
So you're going to be giving Kirk the benefit of the doubt?
Yes, I am. I think he tried to make it work, but obviously he couldn't predict Leonard's passing, so I don't think he's that bitter where he would not go to his funeral. Now, when Shatner dies, if Nichelle Nichols, Takei, and Koenig do not go, if they're still alive, maybe there's some truth to.
Yeah, you know what? I'm going to say that that's probably something to definitely watch for, because I'm not sure if all the tension between all of them is resolved
I
yet.
think George is somewhat rocky with Shatner. I'm not sure about Koenig and Nichelle.
I think did Shatner attend George's wedding?
I don't recall, but I remember reading an interview. I think it was a transcript that George was on the Howard Stern show, and I think George mentioned to the fact like Shatner was kind of oblivious to the fact that George is gay. No, I don't know if that's in the sense that that Shatner doesn't care, or if Shatner is just so self-absorbed he's unable to.
That's a tough one.
Maybe a little bit of both.
But, well, all right. So Kirk is a legend. Sometimes legends have a bit of an ego, and that's fine.
He does have a bit. He has an ego the size of the Enterprise.
But we love Kirk anyway. And,
yes, we do.
We hope the best for you, William Shatner. And again, we know he was your friend, and we can only imagine that you're sorry for his loss, and we're sorry for your loss.
Yes. But
now,
onto something that we both disliked, to say the least.
Now, let me preface this. We love the Oscars. We host an Oscar party every year.
Going back 4 years. 5 years? Okay.
5 years. And we do the whole
the
Oscar poll, and
the red carpet watch. Usually we have some food, drinks. We have a good time with it. And
we are Oscar fans, okay?
Yes.
Let's just put that out there.
I've been watching the ceremony since maybe the early 2000s when I started having an interest in watching them.
Yeah, mine was late 90s.
Yeah.
I used to love watching, Joan Rivers on the carpet.
Yeah.
And, that was all good stuff. Okay, so we're not like Oscar haters. Okay?
No, we're not those people who hate the Oscars. We enjoy it. I think it's a nice night to recognize some great films and to pay respects to actors, actresses, and filmmakers who have departed.
Yeah, and
it's also the competition's nice.
Yeah, it's great. It's all fun and it's all part of the thing. So let's first talk a little bit about the winners and the losers.
Yes.
Not that any of them are losers per se,
but there were some who we were surprised lost.
Yeah,
and there were some surprise winners as well.
Yeah, speaking of surprise winners, and all right, again, I know. Let me preface this: when we do the Oscar poll, it is not who we want to win necessarily; it's who we think will win. Now, with that in mind, there was a bit of a surprise this year, and I think the biggest surprise came in Best Animated Feature, with the winner being Big Hero 6. We kind of both thought that How to Train Your Dragon 2 was going to win, and that's based on several different metrics.
Right, and it was doing very well in some of the other competitive competitions out there. I believe it did win the Golden Globe, and it just seemed to be the favorite, and the Ozmakers favored it as well.
Yeah, there were many different metrics that were analyzed and looked at, and it did look like How to Train Your Dragon 2 was like a shoo-in from all the information I saw, but Big Hero 6 won, and I think the lesson there, of course, is originality is always going to triumph, and the Oscars don't seem to like sequels.
True. And speaking of originality, did you know that Big Hero 6 is actually based off of a Marvel comic book?
Yeah, a graphic novel. I didn't know it was Marvel, but
yeah, it is Marvel. And I believe there were several issues. I don't know if you consider it a graphic novel. I think there were issues. Regardless, I did not know that until after I saw the film. But to be fair, they did make a lot of changes. Baymax does not look like the Baymax you see in the film.
He's not cute and fat.
No, he's green.
Oh.
I'll show you a picture later.
That's interesting.
And especially it's a surprise when one of the more original animated movies of the past couple of years, the Lego Movie, does not get nominated.
I'll tell you what, I don't know who was more angry. The people that were angry that Selma and Selma was
snubbed
on a lot, or the people who were really pissed and irate that the Lego movie was snubbed.
Right, and there were a lot of them.
Oh, let me tell you, some of them were downright mean.
They were, and
on Twitter.
They did win Best Original. Did they? No, they didn't win Best Original Song. They were nominated for Best Original Song.
Yeah. No.
But could you imagine the outrage
if
everything is awesome beat Glory? I wonder if the inclusion of some live action scenes in the Lego movie made some members of the Academy not want to nominate it, because there is a significant point in the movie that is live action, and there's probably a good 5-10 minutes of live action in that film. So I wonder if, because it's technically not a pure, not 100% animated, if that drew some members away.
From what I understand, the categories are voted on by the people solely within those particular categories, and I'm sure the case could certainly be made that that may very well be the case. The animators and the people in the animation industry were like, this isn't pure animation.
Right. But some very well-deserving wins. J.K. Simmons for Best Supporting Actor. That was one of the few shoe-ins.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That definitely was not up for contention. And
Same with Julianne Moore, Patricia Arquette.
I felt very bad for the people that were up against
Simmons
and Julianne Moore especially, because
it's like what if you're ever nominated the same year Daniel Day-Lewis is nominated.
Oh God, just take your gift bag, your $180,000 gift bag, and go.
Right.
But what are you gonna do?
True. And there were some very interesting, moments where what everybody was like with the screenplays.
I was
Imitation
shocked,
Game wins Best Adapted Screenplay, when a lot of people were saying, that American Sniper, The Theory of Everything, and Whiplash might have had better odds.
Yeah, I really thought Whiplash was going to take adapted screenplay, personally.
Right, and original screenplay, I believe, went to Grand Budapest, or did Birdman win that? Birdman won that.
Yeah, I thought Grand Budapest was going to win.
Right, I think that's what I had down as well in that category. We actually had a lot of matching categories this year, which
we did.
Sort of made it uncompetitive for...
Although it did get very competitive right at the end.
Yes, because...
Right at the end, because... why don't we talk about our methodologies and why we picked what we picked?
Well, I try to force my hand. In the end, mathematically, I don't think I still would have won. I did pick Michael Keaton, hoping that I'd be the one person in our pool picking him.
Now, why did you do that? Why did you pick Michael Keaton?
Because I thought that some Academy members, especially the ones who are contemporaries of Michael Keaton, may have felt more sympathetic to him because he is older. This is, a comeback picture for him, a comeback performance, and some may thought, well, Eddie's young, he's going to have a lot of great performances, he might be honored later. I thought maybe this was going to be one of those Oscars where, like Al Pacino in Scent of a Woman, they give him the Oscar for that, which has become a very parodied performance. Whereas some of the other great roles he played prior to that, he's not nominated for. So I think that's how Leo is going to win his Oscar. They're going to give it to him 20 years down the road. They're like, sorry for not giving it
Sent
to you.
to the man, because you want updated.
Yes, that's...
I'll tell you why I picked Eddie Redmayne, and this was one of the things I sat and thought about for a while. While we were filling out the ballots, I was pretty much losing my mind at the dinner table, figuring out who am I picking. And it really did come... One of the toughest ones for me was Best Actor, because you're right, Michael Keaton, it did look like it was promising for him, because it was going to be a very promising night for Birdman. But at the end of the day, I thought about who would be voting in that particular category. And they're actors. And Michael Keaton was playing a washed-up actor who hasn't had a big or significant role since he played a superhero from the late 80s, early 90s. And it just so happens that Michael Keaton himself is an actor who has not had work in a very long time since he played a superhero in the late 80s, early 90s. And I thought to myself, that's not much of a stretch acting-wise. And if I'm going to look at it, while actors are very narcissistic and love movies about actors, they're not going to reward him for playing essentially himself.
Right.
Yes, there are certain dissimilarities, but come on. It's a lot like the man himself, and it is a redemption story, and that is what the whole lead up to Birdman was about, the redemption of Michael Keaton. So, no, I kind of felt that they were going to give it to the guy who had, an illness, and he had to not only portray an actual living human being, but also portray the symptoms of an illness.
It was I saw the theory of everything. It is a very physical performance, much like My Left Foot.
Yeah.
I just thought it was my gamble. It was my risk. One of the other big surprises that we were both shocked by was Best Film Editing going to Whiplash instead of Boyhood.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's, I saw Whiplash recently. It's an excellent movie.
Mm-hmm.
I still don't...
Do you agree or disagree with that?
With
the Academy?
I want to say I disagree because to me, that movie's strength is on the direction, the writing, the performances from Miles Teller and J.K. Simmons. It's a very strong script.
Yeah, it looks like a performance picture.
It is. It's a very strong performance piece, but it's also the sound is very well mixed. That I knew that right.
That
but
was
as far as
good.
Editing goes, it's a very tight picture. Yeah. But to me, it's
looks
not
formal, right?
Right. Whereas Boyhood, the difficulty with that is trying to piece together a movie that was shot over like 12 years and try and make it seem seamless. Now, granted, there's one or two transitions in time that are somewhat sudden, but I think that's deliberate because of, the film very much about the passage of time. But to me, just the feat of, piecing together the footage that they shot.
Yeah, that's exactly why I thought that Boyhood was a shoo-in for editing.
Right. Not to mention, it's almost a 3-hour film, so there was a lot to piece together.
That's work.
But where it also got competitive was Best Director, and this is where we split.
Yeah.
David picked Linklater.
I did.
And I went with Iñárritu, and Birdman took the prize for Best Director. And, it came down to Best Picture, which, as we know, went to Birdman.
Right.
And long running going into this, we were thinking there was going to be a split. Because splits have been more common in the past 10 years. And I thought we were seeing a trend towards the Academy splitting those two a little bit more. I had Boyhood for Best Film, David Birdman. So have you seen either film yet?
I have not, and I know that is something that is going to come as a bit jarring. But let me say this: when it comes to the Oscar pool, I actually find that if I'm going to win an Oscar pool, it is in my best interest not to see the film. And the whole logic behind that, of course, is if I see the film, it's going to prejudice me. Mm-hmm. I know I can tell that had I seen Boyhood and Birdman, I would have voted for Boyhood for Best Picture. I just know it. I instinctively know that that's what it was going to be, because the cinematic feat that Linklater accomplished with that is just magnificent to me. Just the concept of that. Mm-hmm. But because I didn't see that film, I was able to separate myself from that emotion that becomes attached to it after seeing a film. And it's sort of what allowed me to say, nah, it's going to be Birdman. Mm-hmm. It really will be Birdman.
And if I put some more thought into it, I saw Boyhood, I did not see Birdman yet. I should have known the Academy was going to go with the movie that's about making movies.
Yes, that's exactly right.
And that's
the actors didn't do it because the actors are very, very methodical and very, very serious about their profession. However, best film, as you know, anybody who's in the Academy gets to vote on that.
Right.
From all the different categories, they all get to vote for that. And come on, a movie about making movies.
Right. Honestly, that has me a bit worried about seeing Birdman. I'm sort of worried that I'm going to find the movie a little bit masturbatory towards Hollywood. That's my fear.
I know Tony Thomas, and I'll tell you this: there's no way that you're going to walk out of seeing Birdman and agree with the Academy. I can just tell. I know you. You're going to feel that that Boyhood should have won.
Do you think? Are you intrigued by Birdman? Do you think you're going to like it?
I think I'll like it.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm going to say that it's
Best Picture.
Right. I feel very prejudiced towards Boyhood.
Right, and I'm going to throw this in here. Having seen Whiplash, that probably would have been my pick for number 2.
Yeah.
Out of the ones I've seen, I think the only 3 I did not see yet were Birdman, Selma, and American Sniper. Mm-hmm. Saw everything else. As of right now, Boyhood would have been my number 1 pick if I was voting, with Whiplash number 2.
Yeah.
So there was some stuff to like about the Oscars this year.
There were.
But there was a lot more.
Let me tell you something. This is an interesting case study, and I've developed a bit of a theory about this. The Oscars is in a transitional period right now. Mm-hmm. Because right now, yes, baby boomers are still the dominant cultural force right now. As far as spending, as far as population goes, fine. Problem that the Academy has is millennials, our generation. We are the next thing. We're going to, once the boomers start dying, we're going to outnumber them, and we are going to be the biggest generation. We outnumber Generation X. We may very well, I don't know the numbers, but I know that millennials are going to be the ascendant power generation. We are going to replace the boomers as the power generation, just based on numbers and all that stuff. The problem that the Oscars has is how to appeal to our generation. And they have not been doing the best of jobs, the best job at it. They tried once before with James Franco and Anne Hathaway. That was the Academy's. They were very open about it. Mm-hmm. They were open that was an attempt to draw a younger audience to watch the Oscars. It didn't work.
No, because they were not good hosts.
But surprise, Ellen DeGeneres was the most successful host at drawing younger viewers. And she did that because she made it a much more interactive show. Yes. I mean, everybody, you remember the famous selfie.
Right, the famous selfie. Everybody was talking about that on Twitter, and she got a little bit more fun with the performance. Neil was very... Let's talk about Neil first.
Let me just say this. Before we really get into Neil, this is what puzzles so many people. Number 1, Ellen, again, I believe Ellen gave the Academy the template, or at least the beginning of the template, to appeal to the next generation. Make it a much more interactive show. Okay? That's number 1. Mm-hmm. Number 2, Neil Patrick Harris.
Very good at the Tonys.
Amazing at the Tonys.
Well, and he's very well liked. I like him. I think he's funny.
Likable guy.
I think he's a good performer. I don't know what happened.
It boggles my mind what happened.
And it's weird because that opening song and dance number that they do, that was a very promising start. Yes. I like that a lot.
A lot of people said that, okay, all right, that's good. And then
because Hugh Jackman opened up with a big song and dance number, and all right. I mean, he's not one of the more memorable hosts, but he did a better job than Neil.
Right. But here's the thing. I don't know. It just feels like the song and dance number
sapped all his energy.
Either that or it's just that you can't sustain that.
Right.
Because it's been done. I mean, Billy Crystal. No one's going to do it better than Billy Crystal.
True.
No one's doing it better than Billy Crystal. And Billy Crystal, he represents the baby boomer generation.
Right, and he's one of the most popular and well-loved Oscar hosts.
Yes, by the baby boomer generation. I don't know about our generation. Our
I
generation,
liked him.
Yeah, we do, but I'm willing to bet that he doesn't relate.
Well, no, I don't think
He
he would.
doesn't connect with-
I don't
with-
think he'd go back to him now. But when they brought him back in the early to mid 2000s, I liked his hosting back then. And Neil was also, I think, he was not the Academy's first choice. An article came out a couple days later that they wanted Ellen again for a third time. She turned them down. They went to, I believe they mentioned Chris Rock.
Did they say why Ellen turned it down?
I don't recall.
Yeah.
No, maybe she just doesn't want to be suckered into the whole hosting gig every year.
Because if she does it 3 times, everybody's going to expect her to keep doing
everybody's going to they're going to want her to be the next Billy Crystal or the next Bob Hope.
Yeah. I think, again, and that's sad because she gave them the template.
Right.
She really did.
And she was very funny as well. And, like, after that song and dance number, Neil, the jokes were flat.
Oh, man.
He seemed weirdly hostile at times.
Okay.
And dismissive.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about this. I think it was good that he began with the elephant in the room.
Yes,
he calling it the best and whitest.
Yes.
That was fine.
Right, and it was a good jab.
And you had to do it. You almost had to do that.
Right.
If you didn't do it, it was just going to be that elephant in the room that was literally going to make the whole show awkward. So, all right, points to him for doing that.
Yes.
Fine. Great. What happened? Something happened after that. I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say, recruiting Octavia Spencer, who's very famous for The Help.
Yes.
Recruiting her to be The Help might have been a sort of faux pas on his part.
Right.
Gonna guess.
Not to mention the whole bit with the magic box. Like, okay, Neil
what
is
the fuck was that?
Neil is a magician. He loves magic, but magic needs a good payoff. And okay, so you're sitting there.
A joke needs a payoff,
right? That too. But you're sitting there. You're sitting there for 3 hours, wondering what's going on with the box. He said they're his predictions, so you're thinking, oh, he's gonna
share his prediction.
Share his prediction, and you know what? If he had shared his own personal predictions at the end, I guess that would have been fine.
I guess
better than what it was, which was.
Would it have been justified for the whole night to be a running gag?
The only way that would have worked is if he took Octavia Spencer up on stage to open the box, and inside was, I don't know, Robin Williams was in there the whole time since he killed himself.
Okay, maybe something like that.
Yeah, something or like, he performs a magic trick.
You know you're going to get hate for that.
I know, it was a bad joke.
All right.
But
it's not as bad as the one that was swirling around in my head. But I'm not even going to say what I was going to say because it's bad.
And you know what? I'm going to go on the limb here. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that my Robin Williams joke was nowhere near as offensive to the senses as Neil Patrick Harris's stupid fucking magic trick reveal.
And not only that, but he pissed off Oprah.
Yes.
He pissed off Oprah. All right?
Yeah.
And we knew that night was all about, how Selma didn't get as many noms as it should have. Yeah. And, he made the joke saying that essentially American Sniper made more money than any of the other movies combined.
Right.
And it's kind of the Oprah of the movies nominated that year. And it didn't go over very well with the Queen of Talk.
No, it did not. And there were some other... his demeanor the whole time, he just stiff, and
awkward.
And you know what? And I think over the weekend an article came out, and he said he's not going to do the Oscars again. He used the phrase it was soul killing or soul crushing. And you know what? It looked like he had no soul during that performance.
It looked like he knew, that it just wasn't working.
Right. And the weird thing is, I believe he was listed as a writer on the show for the telecast. Yeah. That some of those jokes were his. Obviously, he probably came up with the whole magic trick gag.
Yeah, I feel like that had to be him because he was selling it. That
Right,
was
he
the
was-
one thing he seemed like he was really selling.
Right.
Some of those jokes, it just didn't look like he was committing to them.
No, and I'm not sure if you could ever prove without asking how many of those jokes were his or hers, but this was something I was thinking about. You look back at some of the most well-known hosts. You look at Billy Crystal, Bob Hope, Ellen. You know what they had in common? They were comedians.
Yeah.
They all three of them know how to write jokes and how to deliver jokes.
Mm-hmm.
Neil's an actor. If he's given a bad script, if he writes himself a bad script, it's not going to work. Same thing happened with Franco and Anne Hathaway.
Yeah, it's questionable. It really is because here's the thing. I'm gonna guess that because Franco has played comedic roles, they think, oh my God,
He's
give him a
funny.
script, he'll be funny.
And probably the same thing with Neil.
Yeah. Look, first of all, though, Neil, the guy, any rational person
Mm-hmm.
would say, man, with what he does with the Tonys, God, he's a shoo-in for the Oscars.
Right.
No, but we normally, we question, some of the hosts.
Right, we were skeptical of Seth MacFarlane when he was announced. I think we were both skeptical because it seemed so weird for him to host.
I don't know. I said that could go either way.
Right. Well, that's not really
I don't
an
know
endorsement of his.
Yeah,
when it was
wasn't
announced.
outright skepticism. I remember being outright skeptical of James Franco and Hannah.
Right, I was as well. I thought they were
I didn't
playing
I
a
didn't
joke
think that
on
was
us
a
when
bad
that was.
I thought that was a bad idea right from the get-go.
It,
Seth MacFarlane, my concern was I knew I was going to find him funny.
right.
But I thought, I don't think the people in that room are going to find him funny.
Right, and maybe that's part of the problem with the presentation of the awards. It's so stiff. The Golden Globes are very fun to watch. You know why? They drink, they have fun.
Yeah.
There's a little bit more comedy. There's a little bit more jabbing.
You know what I have to say? I have to say this. I think they need to stop worrying and catering to the people in the room.
Agreed.
I really do. I think those... Look, if they can't take a joke...
Right.
I don't know what to tell you. You lead great lives. You're
Mm-hmm.
very talented, very, attractive, intelligent people. You should be fine.
Right.
All
And
right?
there's a lot of people in that room who welcome self-deprecation
Yeah.
and who can't take a joke.
And I think that, people have this stick up their ass and they're afraid, almost afraid to offend people. And
Well, we've seen what's been going on with comedy the past.
Yeah, that's a topic for another day. Because
Yes.
I could go on and on and on about that topic.
But, enough about Neil here because we're going to exhaust our hatred.
Not hatred, disappointment.
A little bit of both. There were some very weird moments as well,
Mm-hmm.
and I think the one that everybody wants to.
Yeah.
What the fuck was going on with John Travolta?
Here's my theory. I think he was reenacting the scene in Aliens where the queen, the alien queen, is sticking her mouth tongue out at Sigourney Weaver,
Mm-hmm.
and it's that real scary, awkward, in your face moment. I think that might have been it, possibly. I don't know.
The whole presentation with Idina Menzel, it was so uncomfortable.
It was visibly uncomfortable. I remember we watched that, and it just was. Ugh.
It creeped you out, and then later on, you see the picture of him posing with Scarlett Johansson on the red carpet. She downplayed it, but come on, it's a creepy photo.
She was doing him a favor.
Right.
Doing him a favor there.
So, what do they need to do to fix the Oscars? Because this telecast was the worst ratings for the Oscars, I believe they said in 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
They were down.
Like I said, Ellen gave them the template. You have to make it interactive. You have to recognize that, the people at home, they want to feel like they're a part of it themselves.
Right.
They don't want that...
Acknowledge that a lot of these people play a pool.
Yes.
Somehow incorporate that.
Look, some of the... I would love to see, the ratings of, the red carpet versus the Oscars.
I guarantee you there's a big drop-off.
Yeah.
Because I think more people are interested in talking about the fashion, going on Facebook, on Twitter, saying, "Oh my God, this looks great. How the hell could she wear that?"
And if you notice, like E and all them, they make it interactive.
They do.
They show the tweets. I think you need to make it. I think the Oscars, they have to make it into a social media extravaganza.
Right.
I really do.
You know what? You have Facebook at your disposal. Create some kind of, massive interactive game where people can go along and share, their picks, because a lot of
Make
websites
people feel like they're there.
Yeah, a lot of people, and there's
and
a lot
taking part of it themselves, not like this,
right.
Oh, I'm outside of the country club looking in kind of
right,
thing.
and
that might have worked for the baby boomer generation.
Right,
that does not work for the millennials.
And there's a lot that could also be cut or reworked. If you had a better and more interesting show, I think a lot of people wouldn't mind the 3 or 4 hours.
You know what? And there we go. There's another issue, and I think we both looked at each other about the pacing.
Yes, the pacing on this one was very, very bad.
And I think the mistake, and look, this is going to sound heartless and mean, and I'm not trying to be heartless and mean. I value everybody's contribution to the filmmaking process. Mm-hmm. But the audience that watches the Oscars does not feel that way. So what I think they need to do is they need to divvy up they need to spread out the big awards.
I agree. Get to the smaller ones first. Get those out the door and out of the way.
Maybe, all right, it should go big one, then 1 or 2 small ones. Big one, another 2 or 3 small ones.
Because everybody knows the last 2 awards are Best Director and Best Picture, and those are preceded by the Best Actor and Best Actress categories. Split them, like you said, split up, move them around, make it, maybe Best Picture comes in the middle, who knows. But I don't know if you do that, but what I mean is, like, you gotta do something
always end it
here.
With Best Picture, that's fine. We all know that that's the way it's going to go, but does Best Director necessarily
have to fall, or can we find out who's Best Actor within the first hour?
Could be.
I mean, it would make it more interesting, especially for those playing at home.
Yeah.
Because, if you're being competitive, you have some kind of point system you're following. And in a lot of these cases, like this year, you didn't know who was going to win until the very end. So you save something big like Best Picture, but if somebody, an hour in suddenly feels like, oh my God, this is in my favor, and then in the next hour you get some of those other big awards in and some of those smaller ones, and then maybe it flips. But the pacing's definitely bad. I don't know why they started 8:30. They need to go back to 8 o'clock.
Yeah, no, that was a mistake right there.
Because this one went past midnight, I believe.
Yeah,
or at least very close. So you could save half an hour.
And I don't know what they did, but they really fucked up that in memoriam thing.
They did. Oh my God.
I did not like the way they did that.
No. Normally, and they would do clips. They would show you a little bit of a performance from an actor or an actress. They would show you a little bit of a film from a director or a producer. Because number one, some of these smaller names, a lot of people aren't going to recognize them, and it's a shame that they don't give you some reason to say, oh my God, I know that movie that guy produced. I know that movie that they did the costume design for. Yeah. Oh my God, I didn't know he was the cinematographer. I didn't know she was the editor for this. Because those names, they're not going to get the recognition that they deserve. And this is a platform for those smaller names to get credit for the work that they do from people who may not be familiar. And, come on, Robin Williams not getting some kind of... At the very least, he deserved some kind of tribute. He was a huge name. He deserved 5 minutes. The time that Neil Patrick Harris setting up that stupid joke, that could have gone to a 5 to 10 minute memoriam to Robin Williams, a tribute to Robin Williams.
You know what else really pissed me off?
What?
They didn't include Joan Rivers.
That too.
And I'll tell you, I think it all has to do with, again, trying to please some of the people in that room, because some of the people in that room make no mystery about the fact that they didn't like Joan and they didn't take her jokes very well. And that may be the case too. I also will err on the side of politics because, again, politics always plays a part in these award ceremonies. Joan did say some rather impolitique things when it came to the Palestinian-Israel situation.
Right.
And this being the year of American Sniper and the politics around that, I don't know if that played a part in it, may or may not have. Who knows with these types of considerations.
Right.
But
and I saw some people justify or apologize for her not being included. Say, oh, she wasn't a film actress. She had some small parts, probably her most Spaceballs, her most well known. And she deserves it just from that. But her contributions on the red carpet, which is such an important...
She won Best Documentary.
Yes, that as well. She had a big documentary a couple years ago. And her contributions on the red carpet, she made that a real big thing. Without her commentary, I don't think it would not have been as interesting in the 90s and the 2000s.
She made the red carpet. First of all, let's not hide.
A lot of people watched for her jokes and for her take.
She invented the red carpet, all right? She made that into the modern spectacle that it is today. Give the bitch some respect.
Agreed. And, while we're going on time, cut the memoriam song. Or at least have it play during it. Like, so you go through the memoriam and then we sit through a 3 to 4 minute piece. No, that can be done at the same time. And I believe a couple years ago they did that with Bette Midler. I think she sang. I could be wrong, but I believe she sang. She sang "Wind Beneath My Wings." She did sing "Wind Beneath My Wings," and I'm almost positive she sang it while the memoriam was going on. I could be wrong, but
I feel like that.
I think that happened.
I see it in my mind.
Right, as do I.
What was a nice... I know we're airing a lot of negativity, but one of my favorite things about the Oscars this year, Lady Gaga's performance.
Yes, very nice.
Wow. I know I was corrected by someone saying, well, you should have expected it because she went to Juilliard or something. And I'm like, well, all right, but that's not the side of Gaga we tend to hear about. So
a lot of people are familiar...
me for being blown away.
Right. A lot of people are familiar with the theatrical side of Gaga. They're not used to that Gaga is classically trained.
Yeah.
And, while she did release that jazz album and standards album with Tony Bennett, and she's been touring with him, that's still kind of fresh in people's minds.
Yeah.
But it was a very nice tribute to Julie Andrews.
Okay, I was blown away because it was one of the most beautiful renditions of that particular song I've ever heard, and also it was probably one of the finest performances ever.
Right, that was
stunning.
That was a very nice moment as well. Now, speaking of songs, would you cut down on every best original song nominee getting sung? Everything was awesome. That was very fun, that performance, because it's a fun song and they did a lot with the performance. You had Will Arnett come out as as Batman. There was it was a very interactive kind of performance because there was a lot going on. Some of the other songs,
I don't claim to know or have all of the answers for their situation.
Because aside from that one, the only other one that I actually enjoyed watching was Toby Keith's rendition of the song nominated from the Glenn Campbell documentary.
Yeah, I think that maybe you make it very clear that there needs to, it can't just be, singer goes out there, stands and sings.
Right.
You have to make it a showpiece.
Right, unless it's the kind of song where it's very intimate and touching, like Toby Keith's performance.
Well,
but like going back to that, you don't need 3 or 4 of them.
No.
I thought
I think you need to honor all of the songs, and maybe they could do like a one piece where all of them get like almost like their own little thing or something like that. But it depends.
Or you could simply do when they're reading the nominations, you play a little bit of the song, or similar to how they do the previews for Best Picture throughout the night when they have somebody talk about the film and then show a preview. Maybe have somebody come out, talk about the song, show a little bit of a clip, either from a music video, because most of those songs do have music videos, or find a way that it's showcased in the film.
Yeah, look again. I don't claim to be able to heal all the woes that some people have. Some people are going to like it. Some people aren't going to like it. I get it, but there has to be like a happy medium.
Now, the Academy, I don't know if you saw this article. They have been thinking of making a change. Perhaps not the change that people were expecting, but they are talking about cutting back down the Best Picture nominees back down to 5.
Yeah.
The rule was weird because they could have as few as 5 but as many as 10, I think. But they did not have some years you might have 7, some years, which is kind of a weird. And the intent was to placate the outrage that Dark Knight was not nominated.
Well, here's the thing,
they did, obviously, not to cut you off, but they did not get the audiences in.
You cut me off, never.
Sorry. Well, they didn't get the audiences in that they were expecting to if they nominate a more popular film. But how many? The people that watch something like, for example, the MTV Awards for film, they have something, I forget the name of it.
Movie awards?
I think they have something.
Yeah, I know they have something.
Yeah.
What is it called?
It doesn't matter. But those people, most of those people probably aren't tuning in to the Oscars.
That's a younger crowd.
Right.
Like a really younger crowd.
I mean, the Academy's not probably going to get in. Well, maybe they would if they nominated a Twilight film for Best Picture. But, they're never going to do something like that.
I'm not saying that they need to be the People's Choice Awards.
Right.
But this is a big, big issue right now.
Right.
And it was alluded to by Sean Penn at the Oscars. He was talking about the films being nominated, and he kind of threw a little bit of shade at the people. I'm going to guess American Sniper. He was really throwing shade at when he said, this is the night that we nominate not the films that make the most money, but the films with the most artistic merit.
Right.
I'm paraphrasing. That may not be his exact wording, but it's pretty darn close. And it at least expresses the point that he was making. He definitely was putting his thoughts out on this issue, and it is certainly something that's going around right now and being heavily debated in the business right now. But I think they need to keep from just the perspective of getting people to watch the award ceremony. They need to have some of those films at least recognized or nominated.
And I agree. And
they do.
And I think this will be an interesting year because you have some very big, popular movies coming out. You have Star Wars 7, and the original Star Wars was nominated for a lot of Academy Awards, including Best Picture, lost to Annie Hall. So I wonder if they will nominate something like that to sort of bring it in, because they really haven't since The Dark Knight. I don't think, have they nominated a more popular film that you can think of?
Popular? What do we? I mean,
well, what I mean is like something that normally wouldn't have been recognized by the Academy.
Some of those movies, though, have broken over $100 million.
Right. Well, what I guess I'm getting at is, have they nominated something that probably would not have been nominated?
Nerd culture.
Maybe that's what I'm getting at. Like, a movie like American Sniper, Selma, like anything historical that's critically acclaimed is going to get nominated.
You're getting at nerd culture.
Yeah, like have they really nominated? Have they nominated something that kind of appeases the segment of the community that says, oh, they never recognize. The last one I can, Lord of the Rings, Return of the King, that won like almost everything it was I think it won everything it was nominated for.
Just about. It was a clean sweep, I think.
I think it was 11 awards, I believe. I mean, since that, I don't think you've seen.
I mean, no, nothing is standing out, and I could be very wrong, but at the very least, if they didn't receive the attention that would be able for me to be able to remember it. So it can't be that significant. I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think so. I'm taking a quick look at some of the recent nominees, and going back at least in the 2010s, you have a lot of movies that Maybe Les Miserables, you could argue, but I mean, it's a period piece. It has a lot of the...
well, theater geeks, but...
Right, but even going back, a lot of these movies... Moneyball, I guess you could argue that may not have been nominated had they not made that rule change.
Yeah.
But, every once in a while, a sports movie does come along that's well liked by the Academy.
What I think the big thing, of course...
Inception, that's the only one I've seen so far. But then again, they sometimes like their cerebral movies, so who knows?
It was a cerebral... Yeah, I mean, look, the point here is the Oscars, it faces a problem, whether they like to hear it or not. The criticism is made that it's an elitist broadcast, essentially.
Right.
I don't necessarily agree with that, but there are a lot of people who do agree with that assessment. And the problem is you need butts sitting there watching the broadcast in order to keep it going.
Right, and I mean, that's ad money, and...
I think the best way to honor these pictures is to expose these movies to the most broadest audience as possible. Mm-hmm. And if that means to have the nomination limit be 10 and put some movies that most people know have no chance in hell of winning Best Picture, keep that there, because you don't... There's enough criticisms that are going to be made of the Oscars. Mm-hmm. This doesn't even have to be one of them. This is an easy fix.
And the beauty of the Oscars is that it does allow some of these films that are smaller budgets, that are not as well known, to get exposure.
Yeah.
The nomination alone of some of these movies may compel someone to see it. For example, do you think my mother would have seen Birdman had it not been nominated? Probably. Would we have seen it? Probably, because we like the director. And there's a lot of buzz about Keaton's performance. But
Keaton, and it is kind of a movie we watch because we have like a more like artsy kind of
but somebody like your average your average viewer who, like my mother, she fits in. She's one of those
geeks.
She's one of those people that she watches it, but she's mainly watching it for the red carpet.
Yeah.
Or a movie like Boyhood. Would she have seen that had it not been nominated?
No.
Probably not. So you do need to have that kind of...
And that's not to say that we're sticking our noses up at anybody here.
No, because I think Dark Knight should have been nominated way back when.
Yeah, and I think Return of the King certainly deserved it.
Right. But we're not saying that the only films that need to be recognized are your Oscar fare, your period pictures, your biopics.
People literally call them Oscar films.
Yeah, your Oscar bait movies. Yeah. They're going to get nominated anyway. Let's try and put some recognition towards movies that may not be, that may not get the recognition, but still have a lot of the same energy and effort put into them.
Yeah, it's tough. It really is, and I understand that the movie industry it's in a tough time right now.
Yeah,
it really is, because these types of movies. It's weird to think about it, but if you look at television, if House of Cards was a movie, it would be an Oscar bait film.
Absolutely.
It would be. Here's the thing. It's on television. And yet it gets a rather broad mainstream audience. It really does. If it were a movie, I don't think it would get the audience that it gets. Television, for whatever reason, with long form narrative, gets like gets this I don't know, with audiences. Maybe it's because of the long form narrative. Mm-hmm. It's able to get an audience that film just isn't. And you could even argue that right now the dominant form of media in this country right now is television.
Right. And also television, especially in the advent of HBO Go, Netflix, Hulu, all this streaming, it's easier to digest a piece of work that is
at your own pace.
At your own pace, not to mention that's designed to tell a story episodically, where even if it's an hour long, like House of Cards, it's still easier to sit there for 4 or 5 hours and watch those. Like Game of Thrones, when I binge watched that with Rebecca, we went through the 3rd season. We started at 5 o'clock and we finished at 1 in the morning. It engages you. You want to keep watching more and more.
Filmmakers are always scratching their heads, saying, "Why can't films do that?" Why don't people binge watch films? And sometimes they do. I mean, I believe me, I've binge watched Star Wars. Okay, I remember when Revenge of the Sith came out. I binge watched every Star Wars movie. And okay, but yes, that it's done, but not like television
No.
for whatever reason. And look, would Breaking Bad be an Oscar film if it were? Yes, it would. If it were a film, it would be an Oscar film.
Agreed.
But yet, it does well. I don't know. This is a debate that's going on right now in Hollywood, and I think, of course, it all has to do with one big thing: movie ticket admission prices.
Agreed.
There's some films that people just don't want to spend $9 on.
Right, at $9 is cheap in this area.
Yeah.
And some of the more, New York,
I believe it's 10
California,
to 12.
very expensive. Not to mention, you don't have to get concessions, but
No.
when the price of concessions brings your movie-going experience to the price of a decent dinner,
You could be looking at $30.
A person.
$40.
between, getting the drinks and sharing everything, and, the phrase is, oh, I'll wait for it to come out on Redbox, Netflix.
It is now an official phrase.
And the time between theatrical release and DVD Blu-ray release has gotten much, much shorter in the past couple of years, which I think helps. Like before, when I was younger, when I was 13, 14, there were some movies I went to see in theaters because I knew it would be 7 to 8 months before it got on DVD and Blu-ray. Now I think the turnaround on some of these movies is 3-4 months. Like take Birdman. Birdman was all the talk. I believe it came out in September.
Yeah.
Blu-ray, DVD release February. Like all the Oscar movies, I believe, are out right now.
Yeah.
The Hunger Games, I believe that came out in November.
Yeah. It's not.
It's already out on Blu-ray, so you're talking 4 or 5 months away. People can wait.
Yeah.
And with the prices of tickets, not to mention movie-going has been a lot more obnoxious the past couple of years due to everybody on their phone.
This isn't just me and Tony griping, okay? Look, there has been a noticeable uptick in assholery at the movie theaters. I don't know what the fuck that's about. It could be the phones. It could just be, asshole kids. But I'm sorry. A couple of years ago, we went to go see the Nightmare on Elm Street remake. 10 o'clock show. Somebody brings their fucking kid to it. Come on.
Agreed. And I've been seeing that a lot.
Crying.
I did happen to go see 50 Shades of Grey, and somebody brought an infant to that movie. Granted, the child left in about...
You sound like Martha Stewart talking about cooking from Betty Crocker.
We'll talk about that film some other time. But, the kid was there for at least 10, 15 minutes, and it was loud. It was a little annoying. And, why bring your kids? I think you don't need to bring your kid to every movie, especially if they can't sit quiet and sit still. I saw one of the Marvel movies in theaters not too long ago, and there was a troop of about 8 to 10 kids ranging from 8 years old to 13, and when one of them got up to go to the bathroom to get popcorn, half of them went. They were loud, they were shuffling around. And, your cell phone users who take out a phone. We saw recently, going back, it was some general admission movie where, it was a PG-13, so kids were going to see it. A kid's movie maybe that I saw recently where Into the Woods, that was it. There was a child in Into the Woods. She was maybe 14, 15 years old. I don't know if you remember this one.
Yeah.
About maybe an hour and a half into the film, she puts a coat over her head, facing her front, not over the head, and she's playing on a Nintendo DS or some kind of Game Boy for the last hour of the film.
No, it's getting bad, and I'm about to give somebody $1 billion idea. Invent an app that will report bad behavior in a movie theater, because something has to be done. And theaters, if you're not cracking down on this type of thing, you need to, because people are not going to hand over $9 anymore for an unpleasant experience. This shit needs to be cracked down on. It needs to be cracked down on fast, because people, I don't want to put up with it anymore. And I'm very well happy just sitting in my house watching a film anymore, rather than going to the theater. And believe me, I loved going to the theater. It's a magical experience. but it isn't a magical experience when you have people, on their phones, being just disgusting human beings.
Agree.
It's just not worth it.
It's a lot of
anymore.
very selfish behavior.
I can't be in the film when I'm agitated. I
Right.
just can't be.
And some of the people, they get mad with you for telling them to put the phone away.
They're amazed.
And some theater chains, I know the Alamo Draft House, and I think AMC, they're very strong on their policy regarding people on their films. They will kick people out. I think in some cases they don't even give them a second chance. You're reported once, they talk to you, they kick you out. Very, very strong.
It's in their best interest.
Right,
to
and
really start
Cinemark
cracking down on
does
this.
have an app that they promote before their theaters to use the app to put your phone into a silent mode, and they reward you by giving you like points towards like concessions and snacks. I don't think RC Theaters does it. I know Cinemark's big on that.
I mean, it isn't, and we all know it. That's a good thing to do. But there's just so many other things, disgusting things that people do besides being on their phone. They really just need to crack down on it. They just do. I mean, but as far as movies go,
Yeah.
it's always a joy.
It's
always a joy to watch them.
And there's a lot coming out this year.
Yeah.
You have your new slate of Marvel films, Star Wars 7.
Oh yeah.
I believe the finale for the Hunger Games series, I believe, is this year, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
Just a lot of big blockbusters coming out this summer and this fall.
If this isn't going to be one of the greatest box office years in film history, there might be a problem.
Right.
Which is what we are going to talk a little bit about next week.
Yes. Until then, I'm Tony Thomas.
I'm Dave Masakura.
And this was Burn Popcorn. Got it.